So we're going to move on to Liverpool now. It's been a while since Mo Salah gave his comments after the game at Leeds prior to Christmas. I think it was like early December, but all of a sudden, 5-6 weeks later, Mo Salah is due back at Liverpool this week. We expect him to travel to Marseille for the Champions League game. So Beth, obviously, he's been away at the AFCON for over a month, but the situation that he left behind, has that been resolved, or is it still going to potentially blow up again for Arne Slot?
Yeah, it's a little bit of an unknown at the moment. I think Liverpool need reinforcements this month. You know, they need reinforcements in offence and in defence as well. So I think having a player of Mo Salah's calibre coming back when it seems like they're not going to be very active in the transfer market, you would say is a positive for Liverpool. But that comes with the caveat of we don't know what Mo Salah is coming back to Liverpool. Is it going to be a player with a point to prove, who is content to take his place back in the squad, is content to be sort of dictated to by the manager and his plan and fitting into the manager's system? Or is it going to be the Mo Salah that, you know, came out and spoke to the press at Leeds in early December, who is, you know, very unhappy with his position, you know, on the bench as he was before he went to AFCON? So the official word from Liverpool is that, you know, the situation is resolved. Arne Slot has come out a number of times and said, you know, that there's no issue still to be resolved. You would hope that maybe that time apart with Salah being away at AFCON, it has been timely and has maybe given time for the situation to diffuse. But, you know, if he comes back and he continues to be put on the bench, who knows how he's going to respond to that.
It's a difficult situation to assess, isn't it? Because Liverpool haven't lost since he was dropped, but they've not been playing great football either. And then while he's not been in the side, Florian Wirtz has begun to show what Liverpool signed him for. So it's a case of, do you bring Salah back to make the team play better and turn those draws into wins? But if you do that, you risk of jeopardising Florian Wirtz's progress now that he's kind of found a place in the team. But the flip side is, Alexander Isak's injured for quite a while, so you might need Salah's goal. So where do you sit on this? What is the ideal scenario for Liverpool and Mo Salah? Does he go straight back into the team, or do you have to keep him at the side and then risk him blowing up again?
No, I think he probably does come straight back in, with the caveat that it depends if Arne Slot is happy to play Florian Wirtz off the left. I think, you know, he's been obviously starting on the right, but he's the sort of player, Florian Wirtz, who is sort of afforded license to be that extra man, I guess. So he's been dropping into more central areas as well. So I think if they can still find a place for him in the front three, then I think you'd maybe give Salah a whirl on the right, because Gakpo has been struggling a little bit on the left. So I think the issue for Liverpool more broadly is that, you know, they've spent close to 450 million in the summer, and actually the squad now looks weaker than it did last season, which, you know, is not what you would have expected when they were, you know, signing all of these players in the summer. But actually, you know, last season Slot had 6 first team attackers. One of them was Federico Chiesa, who was obviously used very sparingly, but he had 5 attackers there who he trusted to different degrees, but, you know, trusted to start games and really deliver for him. I think this season, you know, that at the moment, with Alexander Isak being out for a couple of months, that number is down to 3 or 4 really, with Mohamed Salah being one of them. You know, Rio Ngamoa, we've seen flashes of him this season, but is still very, very young. Obviously isn't trusted to be starting week in, week out. Chiesa, as I said, you know, he's playing more than he did last season, but still it is nowhere near the level I think that Liverpool needs if they want to be competing for major honours. So they're really short on bodies, they're really short on numbers. So really, Arne Slot could just do with Mo Salah coming back and being, if not at his best level, then still being able to contribute, you know, significantly to the team.
Beth, can I just ask that Arne Slot seems to have handled this quite diplomatically when, you know, after Mo Salah made his comments at Leeds, but in terms of the fans, you know, Mo Salah got a relatively good reception in that game after the Leeds game. But if he comes back and was to play the second half of the season, would that be the same, or Liverpool fans, a little bit kind of sceptical of Mo Salah now?
No, I think, you know, the reception and the reaction of most match-going fans when he did come out and speak at Leeds was, you know, they didn't agree with what he did, and I think, you know, there's a recognition among a lot of the fan base that this has been a very difficult season for Liverpool for so many reasons, and the last thing they need really is infighting, and for that to have sort of been sparked by one of the senior players. So I think, you know, there were some fans who were a little bit disappointed, a little bit frustrated with what Salah did, but I don't think that's something that they'll hold against him at all. You know, he's a Liverpool great. if he'd never kicked another ball for Liverpool again, he'd be remembered as one of the best players to pull on the shirt. And I think, again, Liverpool fans are just so desperate for Liverpool to have some positivity, I think, this season. Just a little bit of joy and to be playing good football. So ultimately, if Mo Salah can come back and help them to do that, then it will continue to boost his standing in the eyes of fans who continue to adore him, really. So, no, I think, there's an acceptance that he was probably a little bit silly to come out and handle things in the way that he did. But I don't think that will, I certainly don't think there'll be any animosity from fans when he comes back into the team.
And what about you, Mark? I mean, obviously it's no good for any manager if you're having to kind of battle your most senior player every week, particularly if he's not guaranteed to be in the team. I mean, do you see more sense in Liverpool trying to shift him in the remaining weeks of the January window, or would you just plough on, hope that he kind of gets his head down and trains and plays properly and then sort it in the summer?
Yeah, I mean, if Isak was fit, I think you could consider letting Salah go this window if you had a significant offer from Saudi Arabia, because it hasn't been the Mo Salah that we know this season, and I think the limitations of his game, the lack of tracking back, etc., have been exacerbated by, like as Beth says, the changing personnel up front. The forwards that are there now don't work as hard as the ones that have left. But with Isak injured and with Liverpool obviously in a tricky situation, I mean, fighting for top four rather than fighting for the title, you can't afford to let one of your all-time great goal scorers leave. But I think in the summer, I think it's inevitable. I mean, I was just going to ask Beth the question, actually, but I might as well answer it myself before I ask her. I mean, I was going to ask her whether we can see both Salah and Slot being there next season. And I think Salah will go. And from the conversation that I'm having with Liverpool fans and, ex-players right now, I think that Slot could be in a very difficult situation because, and I'm surprised at this because obviously he got a lot of credit in the bank last year for winning the title. But all I'm hearing now is the fact that the football's boring, the football's negative, it's cautious, there's too many sideways passes, and he's evolved the team in a manner that the fans don't want to see. They want to see Jurgen Klopp football, and last season was kind of a hybrid. It was almost like the Jurgen Klopp era was still there, but Slot had tightened it up a little bit, and it's why they won the league. But now, the Klopp element seems to have disappeared, and they're left with this kind of pragmatic Dutch football, which we know has not gone down well at Man United over the years. It doesn't really work in the Premier League, this style of play. So, Beth, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but Salah's situation, how will that play out? And also Arne Slot, is he beginning to lose the fans' faith, really?
I think this is purely my opinion. This isn't from, anything that I've been told. I think if I had to put money on it right now, I would say that Liverpool could well start next season without either of them at the club, which, like you say, sort of seemed inconceivable a few months ago. Salah had led them. It had helped, his goals had helped lead them to the second Premier League title. It's only the second league title they've won in 35 years. And the manager obviously was a huge part of that. And I have been quite defensive, I think, of Arne Slot this season. And I've got a little bit of stick from me off some Liverpool fans. But, I think he does have credit in the bank. I think, maybe some of the narrative around him has been a little bit unfair in terms of, I don't think he's been helped necessarily by the summer recruitment, because as much as Liverpool have spent money and signed some very good players, as a squad, there were enormous holes in the squad. That there was a period in the autumn and into the winter where Ibrahim Konate was playing terribly, just really, really bad, and costing Liverpool a goal essentially every week. And Slot was in a position where he literally couldn't take him out of the team because he had no one to replace him with. And I think, the last few weeks we've seen he's been unable to rotate up front. And then there is obviously the added tragedy of what happened to Diogo Jota and the impact that that's had on everyone at the club over the past, 6 or 7 months. So I think he's had a lot to contend with. But, they're on this 12-game unbeaten run now. And I don't think his position or his standing in the eyes of a lot of the fans is any more secure than it was when they were losing every single week, which is a problem. So I think, if he is able to turn that around in the next few months, if he's able to win a trophy, if he's able to get Liverpool back playing good football, then, obviously there's every chance that he stays. But, at the moment, I think the tide does feel like it's turning a little bit in terms of, once you start losing the match going fans, that is when it is hard to sort of see how you long term can come back from it. And there were some boos at the final whistle on Saturday. There is now, every time you go into Anfield at the moment, there just seems to be this real sense of anxiety, this lack of belief. which is obviously something that was, fundamental to what Liverpool did under the previous managers. So, yeah, it's hard to tell. I think a lot hinges on the next few months, but it does feel like, Slot needs a big few months if he's to win back some of the fans who've started to turn a little bit.
Just on that, I think that Arne Slot's big problem might be Xabi Alonso, because that is completely out of his control. And Liverpool, whether Xabi Alonso was Liverpool's first choice to replace Klopp is up for debate, I guess. He decided he was going to stay at Leverkusen, and they ended up with Arne Slot. It worked out fantastically well last season. But the fact that Alonso is now available, I don't think his reputation is particularly tainted by what happened at Real Madrid. He's going to have quite a long break if he doesn't take any other job. And in the summer, there's every possibility that he may be looking for his next challenge, of which Liverpool, you imagine, would be quite high up his list as, having been such a successful player there. So I do feel a little bit sorry for Arne Slot looking, in from the outside, because I don't think that there's anything he can do to control that situation. Whether he gets Liverpool back in the Champions League places, or whether he wins a trophy, anything like that, I think he'll always have this kind of shadow now hanging over him between now and the end of the season of Xabi Alonso. And there'll be Liverpool fans, I'm sure, who are looking at him thinking, I'd much rather have Xabi Alonso come in and bring his brand of football rather than the football that they're seeing under Arne Slot, despite what he did for the club last season.
Yeah, I think that is a real issue. I think he's actually got two big problems. I think one of them is Xabi Alonso, and I think one of them is Jurgen Klopp, in the sense that, last season we all said before the start of last season, it's an impossible task almost to come in and replace Jurgen Klopp, because he wasn't just a fantastic manager in terms of the football that he was able to create on the pitch, but also in terms of the way he led the club, almost like a statesman, really, with such a big personality. And Arne Slot is very different to that. And I think maybe that was tough for some fans to reconcile with last season, but because Liverpool were winning, it was a pill that they were sort of happy to swallow, whereas this season the results and the performances haven't been there. And so now the fact that Arne Slot isn't as outgoing, doesn't have as much of an emotional connection with the fans, is sort of working against him. I've seen so many things, certainly on social media, from fans just sort of longing for Jurgen Klopp to come back. And, I think one concern for Liverpool and for Liverpool fans is, one thing that people have criticised Manchester United for a number of years is sort of harping on about Sir Alex Ferguson and what he was able to do, and his sort of shadow looming over the club. And of course, Jurgen Klopp was a legendary figure, and he'll always be revered at Anfield. But I think the thing that people need to bear in mind is that whoever Liverpool's manager is going forward, whether it's Slot, whether it's Xabi Alonso, whether it's someone else, they're not going to be Jurgen Klopp, both in terms of the personality and the football. So I think that's something that's working against him. And as Rob said as well, the fact that Alonso now is someone that a lot of fans would like to have at the club.
The Xabi Alonso one's pretty interesting. Obviously, he knows Florian Wirtz, he knows Jerry Frimpong. He's got their kind of backing straight away because he won a Bundesliga title with them. So you can see him walking into that dressing room and having an immediate impact. But I just want to kind of drop something that I was told last week. So when the whole Man United situation was going off, and I was speaking to somebody talking about United, and just a kind of a cheeky little, why not consider Xabi Alonso? And obviously, I know the answer is that he played for Liverpool, etc. But it was like, no, that's not going to happen. He said, and the story that this guy had been told, and he has a bit of insight, was that they said, no, Xabi Alonso will end up at Bayern Munich this summer, and Vincent Kompany will go to Man City, because Man City want Vincent Kompany back. And Xabi Alonso is an obvious fit for Bayern Munich, because as much of a legend he is at Liverpool, he's also a great at Bayern Munich. I thought, well, that's an interesting one, because, Xabi Alonso is he made a career move, got to Real Madrid. He couldn't say no, but he's got to be careful with his next move. He has to make sure his next move is a success, because if it's not, then where does he go after that? And I guess moving to Bayern Munich would be an easier job to be a success at than going to Liverpool, especially a Liverpool that's in transition, because, Mo Salah might not be there next season. You've got Virgil van Dijk, that situation. The goalkeeper, Alisson, great as he is, I think he's shown a couple of frailties this year. So, Xabi Alonso, if he went to Liverpool, and we're writing off Arne Slot here, and that's probably wrong, but if Xabi Alonso goes to Liverpool this summer, he's got a rebuilding job ahead of him. So, I don't know how it plays out, but let's just say Arne Slot leaves Liverpool and Xabi Alonso does go to Bayern Munich. Who does that leave Liverpool with? What do Liverpool do then? Do they go to Steven Gerrard? Do they go to the old player?
I certainly don't think they'll be going
Liverpool DNA. Or is it an Iraola? Is it a De Zerbi? But that's when you're in territory, kind of try to think on the hoof. And they've had a brilliant bit of success with Arne Slot. Nobody kind of called that one. But if Arne Slot goes and it's not Xabi Alonso, then who do they go to?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that Liverpool always sort of pride themselves on, whether it be for managers or for players, is that, you know, they've got all the data there and they like to be led by that. So it will be whoever sort of lines up best in terms of the underlying metrics. Like you say, I don't think any of us would have predicted that Arne Slot would have been, you know, high on the list to take over from Jurgen Klopp. So yeah, it remains to be seen. But I think that the Alonso to Liverpool thing would be, you know, a lot of fans would be pleased with that because of that romantic connection. And again, it maybe comes from craving a little bit of what they had with Jurgen Klopp is having someone who is a legendary figure and having that relationship with the fans. So yeah, I think a big few months ahead for Arne Slot. And listen, he's shown he's capable of doing fantastic things with a lot of these same players. So you know, you can't write him off just yet, but it does feel like he's got a little bit of a challenge on his hands to try and get everyone back on side.